I think the ability to create emotion, to like evoke emotion out of you and feeling, or feeling that you're there, or imagine that you're there, or take you to another place. Like, I think that's really what good art can do.
This is the second and final part of my conversation with photographer Jesse Tate. If you haven't heard the first part, please listen to last week's episode before continuing, as this conversation continues on where last week's left off. Thank you very much. As well as being an incredible photographer, Jesse also runs Duskville magazine, which is a well-renowned platform and Instagram page that celebrates and shares atmospheric imagery. I had an amazing time talking to Jesse, and I really hope you enjoyed this conversation too. Because it's the same thing. It becomes predictable. Like, how do you create a visual style that is consistent but not predictable?
Yeah, for me, part of that is the subject matter. Like you said, I went from a lot of, and again, this is from what I saw on Instagram that I was inspired by, was people shooting gas stations and houses and bars, and I liked it, and so I think that's a lot. That's how you learn. You go out and you see if you can duplicate that and then add your own flair to it. But then I started to feel like it got too repetitive, and I felt like I was relying too much on just that, like the gas station, to be interesting enough. And I wanted to kind of push myself to see if I could create the interest myself, from space, and just push myself to, like, through like color and shading and dodging and burning. And can I create that same interest and intrigue as something that's going on, as from something that's not necessarily going on, if that makes sense. And so once I caught myself doing too many houses and gas stations, I consciously is like, I got to stop doing this for a while. I'll probably certainly come back to it, but I want to make sure that I am not putting out the same picture over and over again. That's definitely important. And I like to stay atmospheric and moody, and keep that cohesion. And like I said, if I do get into, say black and white or portraits, I would probably put a separate page for that style, just to keep a cohesion of that work, just to kind of separate them.
But then again, you wouldn't necessarily have to do that, because I think we always forget. And this is a conversation I had again with someone the other day. I have too many conversations to keep track. But we work in phases. We forget, like, our work is phases. The things we're inspired by now are not the things we're going to be inspired by in 3 months' time, let alone a year's time. So, if you want to create a series of black and white portraits that seems to be very kind of distant from the work you create now, like, that's a great thing, because that's your progress as a photographer. You're not always going to create the same kind of type of work in every aspect of your life, because you're in different phases of your life. The way you feel about the world now is not how you're going to feel about the world in even tomorrow. The images you see whilst walking down the street or driving down the street are not going to be the same as you see yesterday, or you saw yesterday. So it's kind of like, I think we often forget that, yes, we all want to kind of, whether you're in any kind of creative arts, I think we all kind of want a style and we all want cohesion. But I think we forget that we can also change just as much as our opinions and our minds change, and we change as people. Like, why not try and just create something crazy experimental that even you didn't think you'd create? Because like, end of the day, particularly now at this point in your career, where the eyes on your work are great, but they're not decisive. They're not dictating what you need to create. You're not at that point yet where people are telling you, or kind of almost expecting something from you in terms of like, oh, it has to be this. Like, Henry Film always gets mentioned in every single one of my interviews with photographers, because he is almost a god in terms of photography. But
I know,
I think, look at Henry Film. If he was doing something completely different tomorrow, I don't know if that's going to go down well with people. And it's kind of crazy, because like, you don't want to trap yourself in your own style or your own kind of subject matter. Like, you want to be free and loose, because that's the whole point of creativity. But at the same time, you also want to yeah, to be consistent. It's a very, 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 very slippery road for any creative to
Yeah,
kind of fall down.
I hear
Um,
you. Because I mean, if you go to the beginning of my feed to
mm.
now, I mean, it is literally night and day difference.
Oh, I
Um,
am very aware. I certainly did that. That's I always start at the bottom. It's
yeah,
the best place to start.
yeah, I know. I really do. I like to do that too with artists that I appreciate and see where they started, and
Yeah,
you can see like the maturation of their work through, like you can see this point, like they hit this level where you're like, oh, they like something clicked here in 2021 in December on, like
yeah,
you can almost see the frame where they got their distinct style
yeah,
on many occasions. Some people I think were already really good, and then they joined Instagram and then started out and they're already a great photographer. They just started with great work. But a lot of, I think, my story, even though I didn't come, is maybe different, that I was a teacher, then went to film, and then just picked up a camera. I think a lot of people picked up a camera over the last 2 years.
yeah.
A lot of people I've talked to did, and so I think that's pretty normal. I think a lot of people tried, it put things into perspective for a lot of people, and I think people took some chances and tried to follow their bliss, or like realizing that, wow, what am I doing? It gave us time to reflect on
Yeah.
what's important to us, and I found that it seems like a lot of people that I've talked to did pick up a camera or re-pick up the camera during this time.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the few people I spoke to that actually did that, whose whole kind of career started off in the pandemic, was actually Loudpacks, i.e. Trent Lauder, who is an incredible photographer, and the portraits and musicians that he's creating nowadays are just so good. That they're so interesting, and he's very highly respected from a lot of people I've spoken to. It's kind of interesting how people know people, and the photography community is honestly one of the nicest I've ever been involved in. It
Oh
truly
wow.
is. Everyone only has niceness to say about each other. I've have not encountered so far. I have not encountered anything like kind of derogatory or negative. Like everyone's been so positive and so kind of like praising other people and kind of sending other people my way, or saying, oh,
Yeah.
this person's great. For instance, Nico, when we had our conversation, obviously you were mentioned, and it's kind of like stuff like that is great. And I don't know, it's the photography community is honestly one of the best communities I've ever been a part of, and it's so nice to see. It
Hmm.
truly is, and I think you're right. I think the pandemic kind of helped people in a way to kind of give them the time to do the work. I think if there's one thing the pandemic gave people was time, the time that
Hmm.
they didn't originally have, and yes, it didn't help everybody and it didn't work out well for everybody. Obviously, I don't want to sound like I'm being like, oh, it was great, because it wasn't a great time. And here in the UK, it's kind of almost officially over. Like there's
Yeah.
no restrictions anymore, and there's kind of it's all for to me personally, it feels like it's now just being kind of like it's just like a non-issue,
Oh,
which is quite concerning in many ways, if
it
I'm being
is.
very honest, because
I
it's never
Yeah.
really over.
No, it's not. And I just, knowing where I live in the United States, and knowing that we're, I mean, this is a different discussion altogether, but
Yeah,
we're such a large country with such diverse political and social leanings, that I just knew this was going to be a thing for a long time. I just knew it. And it's unfortunate that it's like we had this like little 1 month break where it seemed to get better, but it's just, I don't know. I'm envious of other countries that handled it differently, and the people kind of were all on board with, for the greater good.
yeah,
And the United States is a whole different animal,
yeah.
um, for better or for worse. I'm here, so I have to make the most of
Yeah.
it. But um, that is I find that unfortunate, though, that's still an issue. But like you said, it's been tough. But I honestly don't think I would have found photography, which I really believe is my true passion, and I've I've dabbled in lots of different art forms, but none where I've enjoyed the process. I was always obsessed with getting the products, and like it was like a means to an end. And photography is the first thing where I actually enjoy the process as much as the product. And to me, that told me something, that this is right. This is what I need to pursue.
Yeah,
because like music, like I didn't spend the time practicing my scales. I would write songs. I would write songs so I could show them to my band, so we could record them. So then I would have a product. If that makes sense, or to play a show.
Yeah, it's like taking the time to learn what you're doing, not just doing what you're doing, because I think they're two very different things. And again, it comes back to a point you raised earlier about, when you see people and you kind of compare yourself to people, you don't know what knowledge they've gained and how much time they've actually taken to learn. So that's always something interesting to consider. And I just want to quickly ask you a question, and also double back on something we spoke about. So, do you know the photographer Abstract Numbers?
I don't know.
You don't? Oh my goodness, I need to send you her work. Her work is... Oh wait, and Visual Memories as well. Give me 1 second. I was literally thinking of the amount of people I'm going to send you is going to be a little bit insane.
No, it's okay.
But nothing more than... I mean, I'm pretty sure if you've spoken to Nico, you can ask him how many people I send him, or like how many people I send his way. Visual Memories, but Abstract Numbers creates these beautifully cinematic portraits. I don't know how she does it. They're just so interesting. They're like deeply interesting. In my opinion, they're deeply interesting. And she's one of those photographers I would love to interview. But I would love to interview Henry Film. I think that's going to be my goal. Going to see how close I can get to... I mean, who told me? Someone told me just message him. I'm sure he'll say yes. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to do that anytime soon.
I actually took Henry Film's work and also Morgan Miller. Morgan Miller is probably one of my biggest influences.
Yes.
I love his work, but I have literally took their work into the mentor I'm working with and just said, can you explain to me what they're doing? Because most of the time, most photography, I understand at least how they did what they did. Not that I can do it, but I get what they're doing. But with like Henry Film and Morgan, I literally had no idea what they're doing. And he's done it so long. He's seen everything that he explained to me. He's like, okay, here's what he's doing. He's using layers, and this is a composite here, or this is a layer, and here's this lighting that's not natural, so we created, but and so I love that just understanding how someone who I admire does what they do helps me incorporate that into my work. And so he would say, see how this light down here, this brings the eye in. And I'm like, oh, I never even thought about that. And like, we accept that, that this is not a natural light source. It's not coming from anywhere, but we accept it, like things like just interesting things.
That's
like
a really good point.
Details. Yeah.
That's really interesting, actually, in terms of no, it doesn't mean that. I'm going to look at his work now and be like, oh, let me just dissect this. Oh, no.
Yeah. Because every time I look at someone who I appreciate or admire their work, the first thing I look at is I try to figure out how did they do it, and a lot of times I will take a picture and try to replicate it. Yeah. It's not anything that I post ever, but I just want to see it, if I can take that and then take something from that style and incorporate it into my own. But like Morgan and Henry are two people that I can't look at a picture and then figure out what they're doing. Like I had to ask someone else what they were doing.
The thing about Henry is that I'm very surprised. I mean, like, he might be, but I don't think he is. But I'm very surprised he's not affiliated with like Adobe or some big company like that. I'm very surprised. The reach he has and the impact he has on the photography community, and literally everybody I've spoken to knows who he is and adores his work. Yeah. I'm extremely surprised that he has not been affiliated with anything like that, or that he hasn't had that, like, those kind of discussions, because honestly, he could be like a Sony representative or a Canon representative or any kind of like camera representative or just anything to do with photography. and it will A, sell, and B, it will improve people's photography.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, there's just something about it's kind of weirdly insane to me. And yeah, maybe he doesn't want to go down that whole route, which is very,
Yeah.
very fair enough, because not everybody wants to do that. He might just want to be a guy who's going around shooting images, which is cool.
Yeah.
But it seems crazy to me in terms of just like his reach and kind of just the way I hear people talk about him and also feel about him myself. It's
Yeah.
very, 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 very crazy that that has not happened, or to my knowledge, that has not happened.
Yeah.
But I feel like we should make that happen.
Yes. My
Like,
my gut would tell me that he's has more opportunities than what he has done,
yeah,
and maybe is making a conscious choice. I'm just guessing. I don't want to put like
yeah,
thoughts of words into his head, but like you said, like everyone I've ever talked to throws his name out there as, one of the masters.
like imagine if he did like a creative live class. I can imagine that
Yeah.
that would be sold out. Like I can
Oh
imagine,
yeah.
or because I know he's only just recently, like within the last month, opened up a print shop.
Oh really?
Yeah, well, within the last month, because I checked the other day, because I was curious to see if he's selling prints. Because I was like, I wouldn't mind owning a piece. And it was like, I'll come back later. And I actually got an email because I signed up, and it was like, oh, the print shop's now open. And I was like, that's insane. Like he's only just opened up a print shop after shooting for how long? And having,
Yeah.
so many fans and so many people who actually would probably buy his work.
Yeah.
But I want to see him create a book. Like he needs to like a book.
Oh, I agree.
Like I don't understand. I generally don't understand how he doesn't have one already, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't really understand why like publishing houses are not considering photography good enough to have their own publishing books. This is a whole separate conversation. But like,
Yeah.
think of like the reach they could have if they choose the right people. People like even like Kathleen Cowboy, who I know a lot of people are a big fan of. People like him, who I know would very much would love to have their work printed.
Yeah.
Um, I'm just really surprised that publishing houses aren't doing that, or they're not focusing on that necessarily. I don't know. Like the photography community is a community you can easily dive into. I think
Hmm.
it's a community that is very loyal, and from what I've seen, very kind of everybody wishes success for everybody else.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like they deserve some of that back. Like one of my goals, I keep saying this publicly, which I really shouldn't be, but one of my goals for the next 3 years is to create a photo book of atmospheric photographers, and
Yeah.
have a photo book, ideally with a forward written by Todd Hyder. But I don't know how likely that is. Um,
Yeah.
but I would love to do that. How cool would that be? That'd be
Oh, that'd be
insane.
amazing.
If you had like a collection of, I don't even know how many photographers, but the good thing is like I have enough contacts at the minute to kind of get something like that started.
Yeah.
um but damn, that would be so good. It's my kind of plan for the next 3 years. I don't know how much that's going to cost or how to go about it,
Yeah.
so I need to really figure that out. But it's not I would love to do in the next 3 years. Like I don't care if I have to pour my savings into it. I really wouldn't. I Like generally I would set some money aside for that, like quite easily.
Hmm.
But then I don't understand why people don't think of like, oh, let's have a Kickstarter campaign, or let's do a crowdfunding for
Yeah.
like which is something I want to talk to you about later about Justful as well, actually, because I feel like
Yeah.
there's a way, and I know money changes things, but I feel like with Justful, like the reach you have and the quality you have,
Yeah.
and just the connections you also have, like you could easily do something like that. Um,
Yeah.
but I will say that for later, because right now
Yeah.
we're talking about you and your work.
All right.
Otherwise, that'll go way ahead. But my next question for you is, it's
Yeah.
kind of like the transition in your work. And I know we mentioned it earlier, but this idea of like when I looked at your work, your earlier work, it was very much like a solid subject, a solid focus. Whereas now I personally feel like your latest work, or your kind of more recent work, is very much kind of about a feeling and a space rather than
Yeah.
a place. I was kind of like, I kind of wanted to ask you, like, do you think that's something that you see as well? And is this something intentional in your work?
Yeah. Definitely. It was like I said, one of the things was that comment about that I worked with that lesson I took about um, imagining the person being in that space and being an observer in that world, and that made me think differently um, about space and relative to where we are and how close and how far away things are, and like I think at first I used color as a crutch to make up for talent. Like I mean, like my images didn't look great to me, so I added some color because I thought it made it look more interesting. but then the more I played with it and got a little bit better understanding of it, the more I felt I could convey emotion with it, as opposed to just making it more interesting. I actually could create a feeling instead of just interest. And so, and I that's why I really liked to work with open spaces. That gives you that sky, that landscape, that line of grass that you can work with, to create shadows and create colors and create mood. And so that's definitely been intentional, and I think it just had to do with I guess ability. um, when you get more proficient in something, then you're able to do more, then you can do things that you wanted to do earlier but weren't successful at, because when I did landscape before, I wasn't happy with how it turned out. And but now I feel I've found a style that works, that I'm able to convey what I'm imagining in my head.
I don't think you really understand how inspiring that actually is.
I appreciate that.
Because when you just said that about, I'll use color in replacement for like maybe talent or maybe interest, I've just thought
Yeah.
about the work I'm currently creating. And I was like, actually, that's a good point. Like, it's about the feeling, not the interest. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, damn, I need to scrap everything I've done and start again. But I think that's a really interesting consideration. And like, generally, that's really made me just honestly reevaluate my work, which is hilarious. It was not intentional in any way. But now I'm a bit like, oh god damn it, now I've got to go back and relook at everything again. Um, but like, no, seriously, I've never thought about that, and it makes perfect sense because it's all about creating an image that is nicely colored and nicely graded. But if the image itself before it had that wasn't good enough, it's only ever going to be like a nicely edited image. It won't actually be a
Exactly.
great image. And I've actually never thought of photography in that way, which sounds really strange, probably because it sounds like a pretty basic concept, but I've just never thought of it in that way. So
Yeah.
honestly, thank you so much because now I'm going to be doing a lot of rethinking my life. So that's perfect.
No, it's interesting because I mean, um, like this is like a honest, like thing to, this is like a crazy thing to admit, but like
hmm,
I have only started uh, using photography in manual mode since this
yeah,
summer. So the pictures I was taking were just point and click, and
yeah,
so I didn't understand, like I had a basic understanding of of aperture and shutter speed and stuff, but and I looked at YouTube videos and stuff, but I'm so hands on. But it wasn't until someone
yeah.
like Nico and then the guy I took a lesson from physically showed me with their hands and I did it, that I started to understand it. And so when I've gone back to like my older work, it's just the quality is not there to even work on to improve, like,
Yeah.
because sometimes you can go back to older shots and go, oh, I'm more talented now, I can make this a better shot. But some of it, the quality is just not there because I just did a point and click, and
Yeah.
it was too dark, or it was blue, it was I blew out the sky too much or something. And so just having a better understanding of that has really made a big difference.
But that's cool though, because that just shows to me that you're not necessarily just a visual learner. You're more of a kinetic learner, and I think
Yeah.
that raises the point that not everybody learns the same. Just because you see somebody do something doesn't mean that you're able to do it yourself. Maybe you have to actually just do it and then that way you'll learn.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't think that's nothing you should be like, oh, this is crazy to admit. I think that's a really good lesson to teach people. It's actually a really good piece of advice to remind people of because not everybody is going to learn the same. Not everybody can just watch a YouTube tutorial and understand it. Um, it's something to think about, I think, because we just assume, oh yeah, just watch this video and you'll learn, or read this book and you'll learn. But like maybe that's not your learning style. Maybe you can listen to it and you'll
Yeah.
learn. Maybe you'll do it and you'll learn. I think that's something very important to remember that not everybody is the same and not everybody absorbs information in the same way. You know, yeah,
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Because yeah, I watched so many like YouTube videos, and then I would go out in the field and try it, and it just didn't work. But then, like I like was with Nico, and then he physically showed me like the shutter speed he uses and the aperture, and then I understood it better, and I saw, like, I can see from when I first met him to now, like, is where I think my works started to improve a lot just by working with him.
That's amazing
So,
though.
and he showed me some editing stuff too, just a couple, like 2 or 3 things on editing that has helped me with mood and color so much. That's like invaluable. 2 or 3 little tips that like I feel like has made me be able to produce like way better quality work that I couldn't do if I hadn't met him. And he just quickly just said, physically showed me, here, if you do this with the clarity, and if you do this, and it's just crazy that, yeah, it's how you learn, how you take in information. And that's definitely how I learn.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting to remember though, because I think we just forget that people don't just learn the same way. And I think particularly when you're in education of any sort, I think they forget that, yeah, nobody learns the same way. Not everyone's going to watch a video and understand it. And I don't really like the fact that from at least from my experience from a long time ago, like not like schools aren't really set up, or any kind of educational establishment, they don't really set themselves up to really think about the students' needs in terms of like, well, what was this person is more hands-on, you know. I don't know. It's something to possibly explore if you were to in the future teach photography, or if that's something that you ever want to do. Maybe that'd be a good
Yeah,
thing to kind of consider in terms of like teaching styles and the way that people react differently to being taught. I think that's something to consider for the future, I think, actually. Um,
definitely. Yeah.
so, how important is it for you to make sure your work is always evolving? And do you ever actually worry about repeating imagery?
It's very important to me that I'm always evolving. Um, I do think about repetition, and that's why I try to make sure, like, I try not to use the exact same color scheme. Like, I actually try not to use the exact same color scheme more than once. Honestly, uh, I try to always. It's really just trial and error and experimenting. But as far as like subject matter and color, um, that's huge for me. Like I'm a consider myself like a lifelong learner in all areas, and then what you're passionate about, especially, you want to keep evolving, and um, and I think that's just a matter of putting in the hours, putting in the time. Like the what changed my whole worldview was reading Malcolm Gladwell's Malcolm, what is it? Outliers. Sorry, Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, and where they did the research that it takes 10,000 hours to master, um, whatever you want to master. They took these like violence. They're like, what makes a someone who teaches like at an elementary school, someone who's like in the San Francisco Philharmonic, and this is one of the elite best, whatever, or chess master, or take whatever you want, and they it's like a science that's like 10,000 hours. It was like without exception. And then this person was like 8,000 hours. And this person was, so it's like, I like to think in terms of not years. When someone says, oh, been a photographer for 10 years. But I'm like, well, that can mean anything. How many hours have you put in? Because sometimes we equate years with that you're actually doing something that whole time. Like I played guitar for 25 years, but I haven't touched it in the last year. So um, for me, that's always in my mind, is that there is like a science, or according to these people that did this study, that there is a science to mastery, and it really is repetition of putting the time and putting the hours in. And so I'm always conscious. That's what I'm most conscious of, and I think when I do that, then the work will evolve naturally.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point though when you say about years, because you're right. We're like, oh, how long have you been doing photography? And someone's like, oh, 5 years. So you assume they're going to be really good because they've been doing it for a long time. But that means that
Yeah,
they've been interested in photography for 5 years. Doesn't mean they've been doing
yeah,
photography for 5 years. That's actually a really good
yeah,
consideration. Um, yeah,
yeah.
that's a really good consideration
Yeah, because
because
sometimes you'll see, yeah, there'll be someone's like, I've only been a photographer for 2 years, but they practice 8 hours a day,
yeah,
and or whatever. And so to me, that it's the years kind of, I'm not as interested in when I'm talking to someone about how long they've been doing something. I'm more interested in like, how much time have you put into the practice?
yeah, that's That's actually a really good consideration. It makes me be like, oh, I need to go out and shoot something like soon.
But I mean, I go through phases too. Like,
oh no, trust me, my phases have lasted for a very long time. So yeah, let's not think about it. I mean, to be honest, the flying free ball is partly a good distraction from not actually having to do photography, because it means I'm doing stuff
yeah,
without actually doing stuff. Um, and now that I'm trying to figure out a good way to schedule in doing photography, doing the flying free ball, and having a full-time job, I'm trying to figure out, oh, and also having a life outside of that, which
yeah,
comes last, of course. It's kind
yeah,
of like, I need to think about how to do that quite well, but then I will eventually do it. So we'll see. I don't know. I'm trying to
yeah.
figure it all out. Right. So
It's tough. It's
yes.
finding balance in life is tough. You know, it's always something that I've worked on is, you know, making sure you're doing things that you need to do and things that you want to do, and, you know, and
Yeah.
making sure you're taking care of yourself and your own mental health and stuff.
Oh, 100%. I think, yeah, 100%. The advice I give a lot of people. So the thing about me is I give a lot of people advice they never asked for.
Yeah.
Literally, I feel like my job every day is to give somebody a piece of advice they didn't ask for. That is literally my job. And you think I'm joking, but I'm on. It's probably bad, but I'm honestly not. I just give people advice, and one piece of advice I can give to people nowadays is take care of yourself, which I need to really take my own advice. But like, take care of yourself. Like, make sure you're going to bed at a decent hour. Make sure you're getting up at a decent hour. Make sure you're, spending time looking after yourself and making sure your health is, you know, good, because it's paramount. If you don't have your
Yeah.
health, you don't have anything else. And whilst also being the person who stays up till stupid hours in the morning talking to people from America,
Yeah.
whilst working early mornings, so I have to get up early, so I don't have a choice to lie in. So it's kind of like, probably should take my own advice at some point. And I say to people,
Yeah.
oh, take a break. If you're kind of feeling burnt out, or you're feeling overwhelmed, take a break. People are still going to be here when you come back.
Yeah.
But I won't do that myself, because that
I
means I'd have
know.
to take a break. So
I
I
can
don't
relate to that.
know.
I'm honestly glad, while we're on the subject,
Yeah,
that mental
absolutely.
health is becoming something that society is starting to talk about, and I think I
100%.
actually think it is relevant to art and photography, because I just think that this is just my own philosophy. I don't know if
Yeah,
there's anything to it, but I think that for artists, there's something that we tap into that is so beautiful, but the world exists in opposites and polar opposites. And so for you to be tapped into something that's that beautiful, there has to be its opposite. And that is pain and suffering and, and anxiety and depression. And I think that's really common with a lot of artists, because life just seems to work in this way of opposites. And I think that's why a lot of, I don't know which, it's chicken and egg, are they,
yeah.
but a lot of artists do, struggle with that kind of thing. And it's also what makes them a good artist. But I think that's been my philosophy or theory about it. And I don't know if there's any truth to that, but it feels right to me.
Yeah, there's actually a question that I didn't actually add onto our interview notes that I sometimes ask people, which is the idea of like, is the concept of the suffering artist like a truth or a myth?
Yeah.
And the idea of like, yeah, where is the distinction between, anguish and art? Like, do people create better art when they're in kind of these lower moods, or is it the lower moods that create the better art? It's kind of
Yeah.
like, as you said, the chicken or the egg. Like, yeah, it's actually, again, it's again a very important conversation to have. Like, mental health and art, I think they go quite hand in hand, in terms of like, a lot of people turn to art for a release. It
Hmm.
could be great catharsis for people.
Yes.
So I think there's always something there, and not just that. Any kind of creation is
Yeah.
an emotional response to something you're feeling, whether you realize it or not. Um,
Hmm.
and there's a really incredible artist whose work I adore, and I got to speak to him, which is unbelievable. But his name's Rodney Thompson, and he creates these images. I think they're also portraits, actually, of people with their heads on fire, to distinguish,
Oh
to
wow.
kind of explain the idea of like mental health and, like depression, anxiety, and kind of like the feelings and thoughts being like, setting you ablaze, and kind of like, there's so many different kind of analogies to make from his work, but his work is
Yeah.
incredible, and he's such an advocate for mental health. And I think his work is honestly one of the most important kind of artists who are working today. because his work is very kind of about something wider than himself. And he's a lovely human being as well, which helps everything. But I'm going to send you his
Yeah.
work later
Well, that's
also,
awesome.
because yes, I think there's definitely something about mental health and
Yeah.
art. I think
No,
that we
yeah,
need to speak more about. I think for sure.
definitely. And I appreciate like artists that on Instagram that like bare their souls, like what they're going through. Like I I think it's awesome when people do that. I haven't really done. It's not necessarily my style, but
Yeah,
I like certainly appreciate it and relate to it when someone does that. And I'm glad that people do that and are. It's very well received when I see it too, which is really cool.
I think that's a great thing about art, though, that it opens up conversations you wouldn't normally have with people, because
Hmm.
images are powerful, but then it's always quite interesting to see what people actually, well, no, it's interesting to see how people felt when they created the work, and also the kind of like words they use to describe the work. um
Yeah.
I don't know, it's I think sometimes for me it seems like social media has a great way of making us feel like we need to just look at images all the time, when it's not always the case.
Yeah.
Like, I think a really nice written caption is also just as great as a great image, because I think
Yeah.
there's that kind of adage that, oh, nobody reads the captions, but I would highly disagree. I think people do read captions, because the people who
Hmm.
want to read the captions will read them. It's not for everybody, but I think that is definitely a space for like people to be very, very soul bearing, and kind of talk about
Yeah.
issues beyond themselves, for people to share. And that reminds me of somebody else I'm going to send you as well.
I follow a couple of people who that's what they do is they just say something wise about, like, or, something about taking care of yourself or about being present or,
Yeah,
and so it's nice to just randomly get one of these things and just just, it's like the reminder. Like I always think of it as like remembering. The hardest thing is to remember to be present. Our
yes,
mind is wired to always be thinking of the past or planning for the future, and it's really to train yourself to be present as much as possible. Is It's a practice.
absolutely. Right. So my next question for you, because I've just looked at the time, we've been here for 3 hours. Is there a photo that you regret not taking?
um well, okay, yeah, I mean, just I kind of talked about this earlier, but just the other day there was this line of buses at night that were like where the after school the bus drivers dropped them
Yeah.
all off, and I and it had a lamp above it, and they were lit like perfectly. And I drove into the parking lot, but there was a man like shutting the gate and just looking at me, and I just drove off because I just knew it was going to be a thing.
Yeah.
And so that's, I mean, I can go back and do it again. It's still there, but like that, I think to me that like represents um the bigger picture of I've all these confrontations have made me a bit nervous and scared to shoot sometimes in places where I would have felt comfortable a year ago. And so I see shots that I pass up sometimes when I worry that there's someone that's going to get upset with me or who know, like
Yeah.
I don't know these days. There's a lot of violence in my
Yeah.
state right now, a lot of gun violence. And I just don't want to put myself in that situation. So there's shots that I've passed up just to avoid any confrontation.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I can understand why, to be very honest. I think you never quite know how things are going to pan out. And you're going in
Yeah,
there with the best of intentions, and you're going in there with a
yeah,
very kind of um with a creative mind, and not everybody has that, and nobody sees that, and nobody understands
yeah,
that. So it can be a very, and situations can turn very volatile very quickly. um
exactly.
Even just walking down the street, like I walk to work at 5 in the morning every day, when it's pitch black, and I'm very, very aware you have to be very, very conscious of your
Yeah,
surroundings, even if people don't look suspicious, or people don't look like there could be a problem. That doesn't
yeah,
mean that they won't be a problem. or they can't be a
Exactly.
problem. And I think you have to be very, particularly if you've got a camera, you've got expensive equipment with you. You
Yeah.
know, it's like actually this morning, actually, when I was walking to work, there's actually it's annoying because I walk to work every day and now I've got a bunch of places I really want to shoot because I see it every day and I'm like, I need to come home and shoot.
Yeah.
And I walked past one of these places this morning and some guy stopped me and I was like, oh no, sorry, I'm busy because I had to get to work and I was actually running late. And it's like I would normally stop there. At some point, I'm planning to stop there and shoot something at some point. And it's
Hmm.
like now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, do I really want to do that? Or do I want to
Yeah.
just be like, oh, maybe I'll just find somewhere else? And it's kind
Hmm.
of like you have to be careful because you don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, particularly if it's somewhere you frequent a lot, if you have like a routine of going up to that place.
Yeah.
Um, now I've just said that, like, damn it, I need to change up my walking route because I literally walk the same route every single day. Like, but then to be fair, it's like literally like a straight line. It's like an hour's walk to work, a straight line. Um, yeah, that's pretty actually that's pretty bad.
But
I need
yeah,
to
that I mean that I think that's my biggest concern, and what makes me sometimes there's conditions that are just, that was the night to do it. It was
yeah.
foggy.
Yeah, of
It
course.
was perfect, and I missed it because I was worried there was going to be a confrontation. And I mean, I'm not sure I regret it because I know
Yeah,
I like, nothing's going to happen if I don't go get out of my
yeah,
car,
of
but
course.
something could
Yeah, yeah.
happen. So I'd rather play it safe on that end.
Oh,
But
yeah, 100%. You'd rather be here tomorrow to be able to take another photograph,
yeah,
because
but
to be
it's just
honest, you just don't know.
unfortunate I've missed some great potential shots because of that.
Oh, yeah, of course, of course. But then you can always make that up by taking other images elsewhere that are going to be just
Yeah.
as great, if not better, because
Hmm.
you'll feel more comfortable. Like, I don't know how well you would enjoy your own work if you felt uncomfortable making it.
Yeah, that's true.
Because, I think we also forget that images are created in a certain frame of mind. So just because you're shooting that looks great doesn't mean you're having a great time shooting that,
Yeah.
or vice versa. And
Yeah,
I think
and that's
that,
why I'm always done after someone confronts me. I'm done for the day. Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm
because
no longer in that space anymore.
yeah, it ruins your whole mood, and
Yeah.
it probably makes you question what you're doing. Because I don't know about you, but if someone questions me, even like with the flying fruit bowl, I've had plenty of work colleagues who are like, "Oh, well, that's pretty boring," or like, "Oh, well, that's a bit of a waste of time," and it
Yeah.
makes you kind of really reconsider, like, is it a waste of time? Like, is it boring?
Yeah.
Like, am I just doing nothing with my life? It is very, very easy to be kind of fall into that mindset and be really
Yeah.
self-doubting because someone insignificant said something to you
Yeah.
that was as a
Oh yeah.
passing comment. um yeah, I should probably just ignore people,
Well,
but yeah.
here's an example I have is I had I one woman that I don't she's not a photographer, but she has an Instagram account, and for some reason this has bothered me the most. I mean, I made myself let it go, but she just typed on two different images, meh, meh, and I was just like, I would rather hear, I would like this image much better if you did this, or like
Yeah,
something. But for
constructive
some reason
criticism.
that she took the time to write meh, so there was something about that bothered me much more than just almost criticism, if that makes sense. To
Isn't it?
twice
Twice
on
as
two
well.
different images, like a month apart.
Oh really? Okay, I'd be like,
Yeah,
but you're still looking at my work though.
yeah. That's what I'm wondering. Yeah,
I would literally send that person a video message and be like, are you okay? Do you want to
yeah,
print?
yeah.
um
I know,
but that's just me and my nature. I say that, but it hasn't happened to me. So
I
maybe,
know.
maybe I wouldn't do that. Actually, I don't know. Maybe that's not a good. I don't know. But for me, I would be like, I'm going to follow that up. Um, but I think
I
that's
always
like,
want to, but then I end up just trying to take the moral high ground,
yeah.
and
Well,
you know,
yes, because you've got a reputation to think about,
yeah,
and not just that. Like, and then you have more respect.
yeah, and then yeah, exactly. I want to look back and like, yeah, it might feel good for a minute, but then I know I would regret it,
Yeah,
and
exactly. Yeah, 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 yeah.
and I don't want to give that person the luxury of thinking that they got to me. I'd rather have them get to me and then let it go tomorrow, and then have it be done, than giving them the satisfaction of like actually taking the
Yeah.
time, like you took the time to write back. Like, to me, that is worse than, I'd rather just take it on the chin and then let it go and live another day.
But isn't it really strange though, how it's like the passing comments of strangers that affect you the
Yeah,
most?
it is.
It's
It
so
is.
bizarre. It's so weird because it just throws you off and it makes you question everything. It's insane.
Yeah.
But then when people praise
It's,
you and they're like, "Oh, this is really cool," you're just like, "Okay, that's cool." You kind of
yeah.
it kind of just glides off you because you hear it a lot, and or because not that you're big-headed and you know what you're doing is good, but it's
Yeah.
like it's kind of part of the process to people tell you that your work is good. Social
Yeah.
media can be a bit. We're going to actually go into social media in a second, but social media can be kind of like a bit too much of a happy place of like, oh yeah, this is good,
Yeah.
this is cool, this is great, and it's like, but what can I improve on? And
Yeah.
what do you actually feel? What does the image
Hmm.
actually make you feel, and what do you actually think about this image? Not, oh, that's nice. And I'm very much guilty of this too, with probably every single one of my comments. But
Yeah.
it's not just like, oh, this is amazing, this is awesome. This you as an artist, you want to know how people feel about your work.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's kind of one of the pitfalls of social media. But actually, let's get into social media.
Okay, let's do it.
So, what are your thoughts on social media and how has it impacted your practice?
Um, I feel like for my practice, it's a necessary evil
Hmm.
in a way. I like I said, it's not very social in a way. I think it's not evil in itself, but the way it's used in a lot of ways is not healthy. Um, uh, but for my purposes, I appreciate it that it's not exact like as we've talked about it because of the algorithm, but it's closer to like a meritocracy than what we had before, which is a few art critics deciding who gets to be seen.
Yeah.
I like the idea of you put your work out there, and the theory anyway is that if it's really good, people will find it and you will get a following, and that determines who is successful, as opposed to a handful of people in New York and LA deciding who gets to be successful. So I do like that aspect, but of course there's flaws in that. It's not an exact
Yeah.
science.
It doesn't work
But
quite
like,
that way.
but if we go to Henry Film, I think 100 out of 100 times he would eventually get to the top. You know what I mean? Like, if you put that quality of work out there, I think eventually it's going to, maybe not to his level, but I think if you put out that incredible quality of work, people are going to find it. What do you think?
I don't know if I agree with that personally. Just because I
Okay.
don't like, obviously I love his work, he's great, but I kind of feel that his reputation, this might be a very unpopular opinion, might make
Okay.
people very angry, but I think his work is great and I adore his work. But I think his reputation is more interesting than the work itself sometimes.
Oh, okay.
And I think his process and the way he's approached things are more interesting than the final result. I love his work, and I'm pretty sure his work is actually a screensaver on my phone. But
Yeah.
I kind of feel like, is it original enough for me to be like, oh, this is like, something that I've never seen before that everyone should know about? Not really. I think, I don't know. I don't know the way to best to describe it without offending anybody. But then again,
I know
I can,
I understand what you're saying. I feel a similar way. Like, I think you can appreciate great work without
yeah,
not necessarily thinking it's the best work you've ever seen or the most original or the best. I don't know. I don't know the exact right way to say it, but there's
yeah.
artists that I think are brilliant, but it's not doesn't speak to me necessarily. But I acknowledge their talent, and I think that that's okay, and it's okay to say that.
I guess what I'm trying to say, which probably is going to be a hideous way of saying it, but I guess I'm trying to feel like, is there a great enough distinction between being talented and overrated? Um, because I think someone like Henry Film, he has a great reputation because everybody loves his work, and rightly so.
Yeah,
His work is gorgeous, but is his work only that great and that cool because so many people like him,
yeah,
as
that's
opposed to his work actually being great? And I think that's one of the problems with social media is that popularity dictates greatness, but
that's true.
greatness isn't always what's popular. There are
Yeah,
plenty of photographers who have meager followings whose work are great. so many photographers that I've seen recently who have less than like 300 followers whose work are incredible.
Oh yeah,
Um,
that's true.
and that's good. That's what I mean by his work. That's it. That's what I'm trying to say. Like
Yeah.
the propensity to for people to know who you are and to respect your work, that's actually going to be more valuable than the amount of people who follow you. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, that's what's going to get your name circulated. And
Hmm.
that's what's going to get like kind of people who are higher up, say, for instance, like Adobe, um, to contact you or to kind of want to work with you. And I think that's what I mean. Like, I love his work. He's a great photographer. And would I buy a print of his work? Probably, maybe. There are probably other people I'd rather buy a print of. I don't really know.
Hmm.
That's a good way of saying no without saying no.
Yeah.
Then again, actually, I wouldn't not though. I don't know. It depends. It depends. It depends if the image spoke to me. I think buying prints. I mean, I don't know what your opinion on this is actually, but I think buying prints from photographers is harder than buying prints from artists, like in terms of painters.
Oh yeah.
Um, and it's funny because I have one print by a photographer called Under the Film. And it's weird to describe like how you're so, I think probably because you're a photographer, I think you'll probably understand, but you're so much more selective about what you'd have in your own house or on your own wall because you're a
Yeah.
photographer than you are from say like a painter or from some medium that you don't necessarily delve into.
Hmm.
Um, it's kind of weird. But anyway, I don't know where I was going with that, but that's weird. Um, but yeah, in terms of Henry film, is there a fine line between being overrated and being popular?
Yeah.
That's kind of my opinion on him. Like, at what point does your reputation precede you to the point that you're only good because your reputation's good, not because your work
Yeah.
is necessarily the best it could be? Um,
That makes sense.
I don't know.
And there are artists that I mean that I see um who are favorites of mine who I mean and they're it's all relative numbers here, but
Yeah,
like maybe have 10,000 followers where I think they should have 500,000 or a million,
yeah, oh
like
yeah,
that I think that are the best I've ever seen. And their pictures get 1,000 likes, and I'm just like, this is the most incredible thing I've ever seen. How is my work getting more like more
yeah.
attention? It's mind boggling sometimes.
I think the crazy thing is we always forget that, and I said this to somebody the other day. Like, everybody's intentions on social media are very different.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily on social media to look at people's work in particularly Instagram and photography. They do not go hand in hand. You can't
Yeah.
see all the details, and you can't sit there and stare at an image for hours, and you can't dive into the actual image itself. It's very fleeting. It's like, oh, I like
Yeah.
this, let's like it. Oh, I don't like this, let's not like it. Oh, I like this person, let's contact them. If I like this person, don't contact them. It's
Hmm.
very shallow. And I think the idea of liking something and the idea of numbers only kind of, I don't know, I don't know. For me personally, right now, like, should I admit this? Probably not, but I'm going to admit it anyway. I feel like the more people that follow the Flying Fruit Bowl, the less I really want to do the Flying Fruit Bowl. Um, it's kind of weird. It's kind of like we live in such a society where numbers are so important, but they're really
Hmm.
not important at all because the community is important. Engaging
Yeah.
with the people that follow you is important. The whole idea of having an impact on the people that you're around is more important than having a million followers, because what's the point of having a million followers if none of them are going to engage with you?
Yeah.
If you do a print release and nobody wants to buy a print, or you do a live and nobody shows up, or it's about having a community that's engaged with what you're doing. That could be 100 people, that could be 1,000 people, that could be a million people. That is more
Yeah.
important than having, oh, this influencer has X amount of followers, I need that, because you don't need that.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. I think. I mean, not all numbers are created
Yeah,
equal.
of course.
Someone's 10,000 could be a passive 10,000, and
Yeah,
someone's 10,000 could be a very proactive 10,000. And so it's all things aren't equal, definitely.
yeah,
And I do find myself getting caught up in numbers and I don't know, as kind of a gauge that I'm on the right track. That's how I use it. I feel, for right or wrong, better or worse, it helped when people comment or like or save a picture. I feel like, okay, I'm on the right track because a year ago, no one saved any of my pictures. And now X amount of people did. So that tells me something that I'm connecting. So I think numbers or things like that help me and it motivates me. Um, I mean, we all want to be validated, and
Yeah, of course.
I try not to get too caught up in just plain numbers, but I think you can get some feedback from it.
Yeah, and actually, that's super ironic because the next question is about feedback. So that's absolutely perfect. That's a brilliant segue. So
Yeah,
the idea of like, what kind of feedback do you like to get, and what feedback do you also like to give to other people?
yeah. I'm the same as you. As well, I think I like to get a honest feedback of what it makes you feel. But I understand that we only have so much time, and there are so many people, and um, sometimes I feel you feel obligated. Someone has commented on
Yeah,
all of your pictures, and you want to, you know, make sure you comment on theirs. So my personal thing is, if you make an attempt to communicate with me, I appreciate that you took the time to do that. I think that's awesome. Um, I I find it helpful when someone says something that works for them, or even something that doesn't work for them, as long as they are, respectful and like in a constructive way. Then I can learn and grow. Um, I'm sometimes guilty of just saying "great shot," "great mood," but I try to also, give feedback about, I like this about your shot, or I
yeah,
noticed this, kind of the teacher in me, or I noticed that you did that, and I like that. I mean, I think you're right that most people are. It's a positive thing. I don't get. To, I mean, I've had some that are kind of like, this is boring, or like, hey, lay off the Lightroom color. Some of that stuff, and
yeah,
that it's not helpful. Um, I don't mind hearing constructive criticism. I would prefer it as like the teacher way of a, like, something that works for you and something that doesn't work for you in
yeah,
this image.
yeah, yeah,
And that's,
yeah,
if someone, like, when I get now a few people that contact me and ask me what they think of their image. And when someone does that, when they take the time and show me an image, then I'll give them an honest assessment. And even if I don't love it, I will find something that I like about it. And I
yeah,
think it's almost like the way, like, with your like romantic partner, something that they appreciate, you find something to appreciate about it. You do that
yeah,
because you care about them. And so, in the same thing that you took the time to send me the work, here's something, regardless if it's amazing or I can tell they're a beginner. Here's what I enjoyed about it, and then here's just me personally. Here's what I might do. Um, if it were my work, I might do this, and then keep in mind that this is just, my perspective, and it doesn't mean doesn't mean it's right or wrong. Um, but that's kind of how I feel about it. I appreciate anyone, even if they just write a flame, like they took the time to acknowledge it. I think that's cool. We don't all
yeah,
have the time to write a dissertation on, every
yeah,
picture on what we think of it. I wish I did. I wish I did more of that. With a couple people, I do with Nico and stuff. I try to consciously on every shot say something I like about his work, but they're friends, and so
yeah,
and we kind of have that like agreement. I mean, we haven't verbalized it, but we just
yeah, yeah,
make
yeah,
comments on each shot,
yeah,
and we say what works for us. But anything that's concerned, like I said, it's all in how it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So
yeah,
if there's something that's not working for you, if you can tell me in a palatable way, I'm more than happy to hear it and learn from it.
yeah. I completely agree with that. I think feedback can't always just be like, yeah, this is cool, this is cool. There definitely needs to be a
Yeah,
balance of like, and not just like, I think we should always respect people's opinions, whether we agree with them or not. I think that's the biggest issue I think a lot of people have is that
hmm
they expect a certain reaction from people. And when they don't get that, they're a bit annoyed. And it's like, you're not guaranteed anything. You're not even guaranteed people looking at your work. Um, so, yeah, I agree with your actual assessment. And I'm kind of curious in terms of like, how do you balance kind of posting your own work with interacting with other people? Because, you have a very good audience and you have a very loyal audience. And I think it's
Hmm.
kind of interesting because you must get a lot of responses and a lot of DMs, a lot of comments. Like, how do you balance that with posting your own work, and how do you keep up with everybody?
Um, I really go through phases where I try to hammer all of it out at once. Like like I did with you. Like I missed your met. I was like kind of in a down phase, and that's maybe when I'm working a little bit more on dust fill or editing,
Yeah,
and then I when I get kind of a boost of energy, I will go through all my comments and respond to them. Go to people that have responded or sent me DMs or stuff like that, and try. I really try to do it all at once while I am feeling it.
yeah,
And when I am feeling a little more extroverted and upbeat and want to put my best, I want to give people, like people who've taken the time to reach out to me, I want to make sure I give them the best of me, um as far as giving advice if they ask for it, or sending them to other people or things like that. And I just your own moods and body and your vibe, and I know when I'm at my best to do that. So I try to take advantage of those moods and really do it all then. And then I have to take a break from it because it can get draining. It does sometimes feel like a responsibility um, to make sure that you're giving attention back to people who are giving it to you. I don't want to just take. I want to give and share as much as I receive. That's the whole act of any gift, is that it's as much for the person who gives it as the person who receives it. A compliment is not just for the person who receives it, it's
yeah.
for the person who gives it too. That's what I've always found it difficult for people who can't take a compliment, because I think they're cheating the person who gives them the compliment out of that joy of giving it to them.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important to me that I do like respond to everyone. And but that when I do it, I make sure I can get like I'm 100% present and there for it.
That's really nice of you though, because you very much don't have to do that. You could just be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, call these people to message me. I'll just respond," or like, I don't know. I think that's very genuine of you, because I
Well,
think
thank you.
not everybody is wants to take the time and effort to do that. I actually know, without mentioning names, um, I know quite a few people who are very much just like, "Oh, I want to have X amount of followers by this date, and I don't care who they are. I don't care if they're going to comment. I don't care if they're going to message me. I just want the
Yeah.
numbers." And it's like,
Hmm.
that's fine. That's cool. That's a goal you set for yourself. You know, if that's what you feel validated by, that's perfect. But
Yeah.
don't you care about who's actually paying attention to your work? Like, are you
Yeah.
interested to know where your audience lies? Because if you don't, you're just blindly kind of just being like, yeah, cool, I've got these followers, but it's like you don't know them. And it's like,
Hmm.
as I said earlier, like it's about community. It's about
Yeah.
reciprocation. Like they've given you some of their time.
Yeah.
You should kind of give some of yours. Everything in life in an exchange. It's all
Yeah.
transactional.
Exactly.
And I think you kind of fail to. Sometimes people fail to forget, like, you can't just, as you said earlier, you can't just take. You have to also give, and it's like
Yeah.
you doing the art isn't just the only way you give. There's also other
Hmm.
kind of, yeah, like obligations and responsibilities you have to create a community and create conversation and create connection. And if all you want to
Yeah.
do is just take, then maybe you're not looking at it from the right mentality. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Um, and I try to. I think back to there's always levels and stuff. But when I was first beginning, I would send messages to people asking for advice, and some people did, some people ignored it, but
Yeah.
some people gave really good, helpful feedback, and I really remembered that and
Yeah.
appreciated that. And I just remember just making a decision that as I grew, and if that ever happened to be me getting the message, that I wanted
Yeah.
to be one of those people that really felt like sharing what I had. Like if I can help at all, I don't know how much I can help, but if I can, I'm more than happy to help. And I just remember what it meant for me. So Um,
Yeah, like you remember the people that impact you. You remember them.
yeah,
It's very 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 life changing sometimes, or
yeah,
it can really kind of make you see things very differently. And I think you very much remember that. It's yeah, it's something that yeah I would agree with. Like in terms of like I love to try and I don't know whether what I'm telling you is going to be helpful, but I'm happy to help you because like why not? And it's a different perspective. Sometimes it's all you need.
yeah,
Yeah, sometimes asking a
yeah.
stranger about your work is the best thing to do, or even just talking to a
Hmm.
stranger is the best thing to do because there's no
Yeah,
judgment and there's no kind of connection there. But you make that connection.
exactly. Yeah. You want someone with no stake in it for them.
Yeah,
Sometimes
absolutely.
to get like that's what like in a relationship. Sometimes there's like a friend that I have that I go to because they have no stake in
Yeah,
in
of
the
course.
outcome. They have no there's no conflict of interest there,
Yeah,
so I trust their advice.
yeah,
I know
absolutely.
it comes from a genuine place. So it's I think of the same thing with art too. Sometimes it's good to get that there's no stake in it for them either way, so they can just go ahead and be honest.
I feel like you always need a friend who is not involved in the arts to really
Yeah,
understand what people's art is about. Um,
yeah,
because I think everybody who's creative in any way, who does any kind of creative practice, we're all wrapped up in the kind of notions of being a creative and doing things a certain way or kind of thinking about things in a certain way. And all it takes is, somebody who is not within the art realm to just turn around and say something that will change the way you think about your work because you've
yeah.
never thought of it from that perspective, and nobody around you is going to give you that perspective. So I think
Hmm.
I just think right now in my life, conversation is very important, and I think it's something that we take a lot for granted, and it's something that we
Yeah,
don't do often enough now as a society. I think technology has made it a bit more difficult to be genuine and to be kind of honest. So I think it's something
yeah,
that I value personally very much. So yeah, I think that's you know it's good to be able to kind of change the way people think about things through being genuine and honest and kind of giving them your opinion that may be completely different or something they've never thought about. So
yeah.
it's powerful, I think.
Definitely. Yeah.
So my next question for you, because
Okay.
this is clearly never ending. Um,
Yeah.
do you ever feel the pressure to create more work as your audience grows?
Um, only the pressure to um not have long gaps in my work. When I started, I challenged myself to do a post every day,
Yeah,
but then I I found that I was doing the quantity over quality kind of thing,
yeah, of course.
and I now it's definitely it's quality. If a gap happens and I don't have the work, I'm not gonna put a shot up just to put a shot up. But I am conscious of not trying to let too much time go by. So I usually have a couple shots, 2 or 3 shots edited and ready to go. And then kind of, I like to give a few days in between. Like, and we'll go to the band metaphor again. Is like when I was in a band in Portland, you don't want to play too many shows in your own hometown because then the mystery is gone, the novelty is gone. People stop showing up.
Yeah,
You stop getting feedback because you just played 3 shows this month. So I think there is something nice to having a little bit of a gap. Um, I like to put a couple 2 or 3 days, sometimes a week if I don't have the material, but I don't want to ever force it. If it's
yeah,
not there, I'd rather have the space than something I'm not happy with.
yeah. That's actually really solid advice, I think, because we definitely are told by like the algorithm, like, oh, you have to
Yeah,
post every day, you have to be very
yeah,
consistent. And yes, you do to a certain degree, but you also very much
hmm,
don't to a certain degree. Like there
yeah,
are plenty of artists out there who maybe post once or twice a week, maybe even every 2 weeks, and their following doesn't change, or it changes
yeah,
in the way of like people unfollow whether people follow. I think one thing we should always remember is that the work you're creating now isn't just for the people that exist now. I think we
yeah,
always forget that the work you're creating is an archive. Like people will find your work in
exactly.
3 years' time and love it just as much as somebody did yesterday.
Yeah,
And your follower count will go up and go down. It's kind of it's natural. It's part of the process. So yeah, something to think about, I guess. There
Yeah.
was something I was going to go
So, I
somewhere with
mean,
that, but I can't remember where it was.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, most of the pressure I feel is an internal pressure from myself
Yes.
to
Yeah.
be proactive, to feel like I'm accomplishing something, that I'm following through on, on goals I'm setting up for myself, more than the external pressure of, pleasing an audience. I mean, I want to put out material, but like it's important that I'm happy with it. That's kind of the most important.
So would you say that you create work for yourself first or for others first?
I mean, I I definitely think of myself first. Like that, the number one thing is that I have to like it and care about it and feel good about it. And then second is that I hope that my hope is that people will appreciate it. And when they do, that's awesome. And when they don't, sometimes it's a little bit of a letdown, but I try not to, I try not to hold on to that. I try to, this one didn't connect with people as much as I thought it would, but I still think it's a darn good picture. So I try not to worry too much about that. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's nice to be validated with a picture that you spent a lot of time and work, and people are like, yeah, that is a good picture, or like, I felt something for that. That's really nice too. But I think it's most important that you yourself are happy with the work.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, I mean, you don't want to say screw the people who are supporting me, I don't care what you think. But you want to, I mean, I think any
Yeah.
audience would say, we want you to be, to another artist, any artist would say to other artists, we want you to be happy with your work first and do it in your timeline and what works for you, and we support that, or I hope they would.
That is to be seen.
Yeah.
Have you ever, I mean, I guess another question that's kind of aligned to that question that I don't think I wrote down, um, but it's kind of the idea, like, have you ever felt like you've changed your work based on other people's suggestions?
Yeah, from mentors, suggestions, like I said, like putting more space in between, like the subject or the objects, and think, and like thinking of the space differently. um I'm not sure, like like a comment from someone, like on a post, has necessarily like changed, but like from friends and stuff who give me feedback, people that I trust, that like they will give me feedback that I definitely take to heart and I work with. And if I like to show, I always like to show my images to at least one person first and get what someone else like someone I trust to give me an honest opinion, good or bad. They'll tell me like, this doesn't work for me. That doesn't necessarily mean I won't post it, but I just like to give myself that time and then give someone else a reaction just to see. And sometimes they catch something that I didn't. They're like, "Oh, did you notice this?" And I go, "Oh, you're right." And then I can do a little more editing. Um, but I don't think that the feedback I get is so deep as to um, say you should do like, okay, one example. This is, I guess, a good example is a feedback I got is I had a shot. It was in the fog, and I happened to catch a woman walking down the sidewalk, and so I snapped the picture, and the cars were coming towards me, and they said, "This is a great shot, but why are the cars coming out of the fog?" And it honestly never crossed my mind. Like, I didn't even think of that. I that that you would want the the perspective that you would want the cars going into the fog. I guess I understand. I understand where they're coming from, and I appreciate their input. But it doesn't. I wouldn't go back and change it and then um, do that. But it's something I think about now. It's in my consciousness now. Like I consider it, but it doesn't necessarily change what how I would do it.
But what was if, like, your audience said to you, "Oh, we want to see more images in the daytime"? Like, would you feel like some kind of pressure to shoot more images in the daytime?
Um, I I don't think so. Um, I would probably say something like, yeah, there might be some more daytime shots coming in the future. And like you said, it's phases, because I don't
Yeah,
know where it will take me. I might, I mean, I like fog, foggy shots in the morning. I really don't like shooting in the middle of the day much at all. Um, really at all. So I don't think I would do that, but I don't know. I mean, I take people's, advice into consideration, and a way of like looking at my work, making sure I'm not being too repetitive or something like that. If that's what they're picking up on. Um, I take all comments, like I accept them and I appreciate them, but and internalize them. But then ultimately, I try to go up with my gut, with what feels
yeah,
right.
yeah. And at the end of the day, you're the one taking your time to
Yeah,
create the work, and it's your life you're dedicating to the craft. So
yeah,
it's not to be taken lightly.
yeah. But I don't want to, like, if someone takes the time to send me that. I mean, I even if I don't agree necessarily, like I appreciate that they took the time to make a suggestion, and I'll answer them. But I don't. That doesn't necessarily mean I will start doing that. But
Yeah, you're not. Yeah, you're not compelled to do what other people tell you to
yeah,
do. It's a suggestion, and I think
yeah,
sometimes people don't understand that boundary.
yeah,
Sometimes people feel like because they've told you you have to do it, when actually, you know, the whole kind of
yeah, yeah,
parasocial relationships is very very interesting. But it's kind of
yeah,
like, just because someone tells you to do something and you don't do it doesn't mean that you should be seen any less of a person or any less of an artist because you didn't do A, B, and C.
yeah,
Yeah. So I don't, it's an interesting kind of consideration, the artist and the audience. And I'm always very
yeah.
interested at what point does the artist and the audience merge?
Hmm.
Or like who has the ultimate control? Because as the artist, you're the one creating the work and you have the control in terms of the visuals. But essentially, the audience also has control of your finances and your future, you know.
Yeah,
And unless you want to be creating work for free forever, you have to make some kind of compromise at some point. So I'm always kind of
yeah.
interested in that middle ground. Like, where does that occur?
And like, again, to go to music, like we did that with, like, I was in a punk band, and our stuff was pretty heavy and fast and hard, and we wanted to be bigger and more mainstream, so we found a way to make our sound a little more palatable for audiences, but still staying true to ourselves and our sound.
Yeah.
So like I can see that, like how that can, in art in general, how having a mass appeal sometimes, like I think in music you see that a lot. Artists get bigger
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
they sound more commercial.
Yes, absolutely. Or they sound completely different, or they just,
Yeah,
yeah,
or completely different. Fall Out Boy is my favorite
yeah,
example. Like, because I was in the punk scene and they were like just this great pop punk band. And I get that you evolve as a band, but I almost wouldn't even call myself that name anymore. But I mean, to each their own. I mean,
yeah,
you evolve, but there's a lot of bands that have. I guess that comes with growth too. If you've been in a band for 20 years, you might not have the same tastes and styles and
yeah,
stuff as you had when you started.
yeah. Of course not. You evolve as a person, and I think it also depends on what you're chasing as well. That's also the thing.
Yeah.
It depends on you. I think everything in life is very much about intentionality. If
Hmm.
we're chasing mainstream success, if we're chasing popularity, then you'll do what's popular. You'll do what's going to be mainstream. If we're
Yeah.
chasing, say like maybe like a deeper connection with your fan base, then you'll do what you feel is going to be good for you to do, regardless of the money it may make or the money it may not make. There's
Yeah.
always an exchange and a compromise and a transaction in everything we do.
Yeah.
So I think it's just something for everyone to bear in mind. That's just at least where
Yeah.
my mind goes. So
I think my biggest compromise would come from like where I'd be willing to completely compromise is when someone is paying me to do a photo shoot, or paying, then yes, of course, like I'll do what, this is like, you want a portrait set, for yourself, and you're paying me to do it, then yes, like we'll definitely try to we'll do your vision of it. but when it comes to just for like art, my art for the sake of art, like I hope that want to will stay true to what works for me, and and not necessarily where the trend goes or what people expect.
I would slightly disagree with the idea of somebody paying you money, because they're paying you money. They're not paying somebody else money. So if someone was to pay you saying, "Oh, Jesse, I want you to do an image in this person's style," it's not something you would, I mean, at least for me, it's not something I would necessarily do, because it's like, well, at the end of the day, they're hiring you for your style and for the
Yeah,
imagery you create. So I think sometimes, yes, there's definitely certain differences, and yeah, there are certain compromises you'd make, but there's also a lot of things that you would also kind of push back on, because at the end of the day, it's your reputation and it's your
yeah,
name that's going
that's true.
against it, whether it's being published or not. That person's going to pass your details on to somebody else at some point, somewhere along the line. That image will be
Yeah,
shown to somebody somewhere in some network. So I think it's always good as a photographer, at least, or an artist, to make sure that your stamp is on everything you create, whether
yeah,
it's going to be published or not, or whether it's going to be seen or not. Because at the end of the day, you want to be somebody people are going to hire. And I think if you give yourself too freely and be like, yeah, I can do whatever you want, you can be replaced very easily. But if
yeah, that makes
you're
sense.
the kind of artist where you have a solid vision and you say to somebody, yeah, that's cool, but but this is also what I think, and this is also what I feel, because they're paying you for your knowledge and they're paying you for your eye. They're not paying
Yeah,
you for, because if they wanted you to do anything, they would pay anybody, but they're paying you
yeah.
for a certain reason. I think it's always worth bearing in mind that
Oh yeah,
yes, there are compromises when money is involved, but there are also reasons for you to be like, well, okay, cool, I'm going to assert my authority in the way of like, I'm the expert here, so we're going to do it this way because that's how it's going to turn out.
yeah.
Don't underevaluate the talents you have for a paycheck, I guess is what I'm
That makes
saying.
sense. That totally makes sense. But that's where I would definitely
Yeah,
just have more flexibility.
yeah, absolutely.
Like for like if a family wants a portrait at the beach or something like that, I'm not going to say no. Let's go to a graveyard and like make it look like a zombie film. That's what I'm talking about.
I mean, to be fair, that could actually turn out very, very well. So
It could, it could, but that's
depends
where
on.
I would have more that's where I would have more flexibility anyway, or I could see. I'm not in that position that much yet, so it hasn't come up, but it will be interesting to see where that goes.
But then the great thing about that is that when you're at the beach, there, you could be like, okay, cool. Is it possible if I, arrange some shots that maybe, I'll give to you, but you may not want, but they'll be more for like kind of my personal portfolio. There's ways around it. You can kind of
Yeah,
add your own style and your own twist to the images to make them more
that's kind
beneficial
of how
just for
I've
you
done.
also.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of how I've done a few portrait sessions, and
Yeah.
I've kind of done that where uh, I kind of asked what they wanted to do, and we did that, and then I kind of said, "Here's some ideas I want to do," and then
Yeah.
showed them both,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely. I
that's
think that's
I like
important.
that because you are collaborating with someone. But
Yeah.
I totally hear you. I get what you're saying.
Um,
At the end of the day, that's your work, your stamp. You want,
yeah.
you
It's time
know,
you're putting into it. It's the thing is that like you're putting your time into things. And I think
yeah,
you're not going to get that time back. So you have to make it
yeah,
worthwhile. Um,
totally.
says
I mean,
me.
that's
Yeah.
a good thing to take into consideration for sure.
And actually, talking about collaboration, are there any artists you would like to collaborate with?
Huh. Well, Morgan Miller would be one. Um, I think Elise, what's her Elise Vizzoni, I want to say. Let me make sure I get this right.
Yeah, that's
I think she does Elise Vacconi. She does like just this epic atmospheric landscape with fog and stuff, and it's just perfect to me. She's in Europe somewhere, but she's a big influence of mine. Let's see, anyone else? Trying to think. I don't know. I would just like to spend a day with Morgan Miller and like pick his brain and see his process for me, and another one that and maybe she gets brought up a lot is Audrey Marquise.
Yes.
She's really respected. I feel like her a lot of her work is done in Photoshop afterwards, and I think it's incredible. But I'd be interested in seeing her process of how she does what. Like, I would love some of these people are people that I would just die to have a video from them showing their process. Like, I would just love it. But I would say Morgan Miller is like probably my biggest influence and whose work I appreciate the most. And I don't get what he's doing, and I would love to be on a shoot with him and see how he does what he does, and then and then sit there and edit with him and see how he edits. I would just love to get in his mind to see how it does what it does.
Yeah, that's cool. I think that's a good choice, actually. I must say, I really like his work. I think his work is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Dustville. So
okay,
let's start from the beginning. So kind of like for those people who may not know what it is, like what is Dustville Magazine, and where did the idea come about?
Well, Dustville Magazine is a site. It's just a community, just of artists, of creators, that do mainly moody, atmospheric, cinematic work. It came about when I first joined Instagram, and I started seeing magazines and stuff, and there were some that I liked, and then there was some where I thought they got a little repetitive, and I just thought, oh man, if I had a magazine, this is what I do. And then I just thought, well, why not just do it?
Yeah.
And so I just determined I was going to do it, and I kind of set a I'm going to do it by January. But I knew I wanted to give people a platform, and getting frustrated not being in other magazines, we wanted to give people that maybe didn't have a huge following, a spotlight, a chance for eyes to be seen on them. And that's still, I hope that's what people see and notice from our magazine, is that we're not trying to put just the people that have the most followers and the most famous people up. We actually kind of avoid them a little bit, because they already are established. So we try to find as many people that do great work who haven't had a lot of people see their work yet, and just put them up, and which is something that I would want. I think anyone who's coming up or who's doing work is just for someone to give them a platform to show their work and get some eyes on it, and then hopefully get some people to check out their work.
I have found so many incredible photographers from Dustville, and I actually think, if I'm not mistaken, I think one of the first people that I found and connected with is JT Fox, but I probably found him through Dustville. And he's one of those people that he has really opened a lot of doors for me in terms of people I know. But honestly, I'm not going to lie. I think none of these interviews would happen if Dustville wasn't around. Like, seriously, I'm being serious, they wouldn't happen, because
that's awesome.
A lot of people I see, like as I said to you earlier, Dustville is generally probably my favorite Instagram account. I have so much respect for the quality of work and the output, and just the fact that everybody I talk to about Dustville knows who you are and has a lot of respect for what you do.
That's awesome.
So I think it's just incredible. Like I can't tell you how incredible it actually is. And it's nice to see you being so approachable as well. That's also the thing.
Yeah.
It's like when, I know I've tagged you in a few posts recently, and people always respond, and it's nice, and it's kind of like, oh, that's nice. They actually care about the fact that people are tagging them in posts, and they're actually checking on, what people are kind of tagging them into. I think that's you don't always get that with like big magazines or kind of people like like Witness and Nowhere Diary, where you just know that there are thousands and thousands of people tagging them every day. So it's kind of it's nice to see that. So I really appreciate that personally.
Yeah, that was honestly, that was what was important to us, was to establish a community. That was the most important thing, was a community of people that that had a similar style and could talk with each other and really to inspire each other. And so it was important to us at the beginning to make sure we asked every artists their permission,
Yeah.
because no one was tagging us at first. But the idea being that, like, if someone, if you have a lot of followers and then just some new random magazine posts, you might not even think about it. But if
Yeah.
someone takes the time to say, "Hey, I really appreciate your work. Would you mind if I do that?" Then I think people appreciate that you acknowledge them, that you ask for permission. So we did that really and until very recently. We made sure we asked every single that didn't tag us.
Yeah.
Um, and Russian Dad still will only use Dustville tag pictures. I will venture out if I find a new artist, and I don't ask now. I think we've at least gotten to enough followers where I think people appreciate it, and I just kind of go with the thing where, as long as it doesn't say, "Please don't share my work without asking," then I feel like that's the understanding, that then they're cool with you share it, as long as you um we haven't had any issues, as long as you give them credit.
See, my mind goes in two different directions on that because I feel like I can understand it because everybody I feature on the Flying Fruit Bowl, I ask everybody's permission and everybody knows it's
Yeah.
going to be featured. And I send,
Hmm.
everybody their feature links and all that kind of stuff. Like I try to keep up with everybody as well, which is quite dangerous.
Yeah.
But then I also understand you put stuff on the internet, like it can go anywhere. You have no control of it once you put it on the internet.
Hmm.
Once you hit the upload button, you might as well just say goodbye to it because
Yeah.
nobody has to ask, nobody has to ask your permission.
Yeah.
It's kind of part of the secret code of the internet, like, you know, and not just that, what you're doing is a noble pursuit for people to have more eyes on their work. It's not like you're taking their images and selling them as prints,
Yeah.
it's very clear that your intentions are good. And I think that's really what is going to help you in terms of, like, if somebody stumbles across their work on Dustville, they're not going to be like, oh, what the hell's this person doing? They're going to be like, oh, okay, cool, thanks, because they can see you've got a community. They can see people appreciate what you do. They can see,
Hmm.
they can see your intentions are good. And I think that's very important. Your reputation is a good one.
Yeah.
That is important.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it really just probably just came down to a matter of time, where
Yeah.
it just became difficult to send a message to every person that hadn't tagged
Yeah.
us, for me personally.
Oh
and
yeah.
and
Yeah.
then I feel like if someone is not happy and lets us know, we're happy to take it down. um I honestly don't know what the standard is. I see a lot of magazines that I know do not ask permission, like for a fact, don't, or not, aren't tagged. Um, and I I think we do about, I would say about 80% of our stuff has been tagged
Yeah.
Dustville.
I don't know. I personally have a very hard time figuring out how people can just take images off the internet and just reshare them without tagging the original person.
Oh yeah.
Um, just because it's like, firstly, it's not that hard. And secondly, if at some point you make money off it, you are literally just recycling content. And granted, yeah, you could argue that's pretty much the whole of YouTube at this point in
Hmm.
time. But I don't know. For me personally, that doesn't sit right with me. And also, when you want to get to know the artist you're featuring, when you want to get and kind of make connections and kind of, I don't know, don't you want to go a little bit deeper if you're putting the time into it? But then again, maybe you don't have the time to put into it. It's just like, I don't know. I'd kind of be a bit curious about their intention, I guess.
Yeah, that's understandable.
I don't know. That's just me personally. And that's just because I made it a very, very conscious decision to message everybody, which sometimes I very much regret. I some very much regret it sometimes. Um, but other times it's the best thing ever because now I've got a bunch of people I can contact and have make connections with and make connections with other people.
Yeah.
And they're genuine connections. And yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a weird one. I think also people don't really understand how much time it actually takes to run anything like Dustville, I
Yeah.
imagine. Like, because it's time. Could you talk a bit about that in terms of just like the running of it? Like, how do you kind of organize yourself and your time, and particularly when you're shooting your own work as well, and just having general day-to-day life to deal with?
Yeah, it's like I said, it's in bursts. Like I will, um just like I go through my work and respond to to things, that I'll do the same thing with Dustville, and is I'll just go on and reply to comments. I will check, people who message us and respond back. And I agree with you that it's all about what your intention, and
Yeah.
intention isn't always received the same way by everyone. But
Oh,
our
yeah.
intention is in no way to exploit or take advantage of anyone's work. It's to share and to express how much we appreciate it. But if someone, if anyone ever is to not be happy with it, then that's totally understandable too. But like I said, we try to keep the vast majority of it is all consent given.
Yeah.
But just sometimes there is just some work that personally that I just it's usually someone who's a beginner that doesn't have much of a following. And it's just, maybe this is wrong to assume, but if I were in that spot and I had only a few hundred followers and stuff, and I would just be grateful. But maybe that's making an assumption. But and if I wasn't, then I would say, hey, could you please remove that? And then I would hope that they'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
Maybe that's assuming too much, but
I think it just depends on the person. But yeah.
Yeah, it definitely depends on the person. But yeah, it's really just trying to just showcase artists. I mean, that's and honestly, I get just as inspired by all of the artists as well. I mean, it's just as much for myself to looking at photos and posting them as helped my work incredibly. Definitely, because I get inspired, and that's how I found artists, is just by people who have tagged us, and then I wouldn't have found their work any other way.
Yeah.
And so then, like, oh wow, this person's amazing. Let's showcase them and let's follow them and follow their work. And it's been a really great way. And I've met a lot of great people that way. It's just I think it's just a really cool community, and we've tried to keep that community thing of communicating with each other, giving feedback. We still try to give feedback I try to give feedback from Duskville and from my site too, just to show support for some of our favorite members of our community.
I'm kind of curious, and I can always cut this question out if you don't want to answer it. But
sure,
do you want to make money from Duskville?
I'm open to it. I have to feel really, really comfortable about how that is. Like one thing is I don't feel comfortable about like people paying us for a feature. It would have to be something where everyone involved feels good about it. Like say like a magazine or something, or it's just important to me that everyone feels like they're a part of it or feels comfortable in the process of it. But it's not necessary. I don't know I mean, I would like to do a magazine, that's for sure. I don't think there's a lot of money to be made in that. I think it's more just to show. I assume that the money would go back into creating another magazine. Like it would,
of course,
it would just go to be repaying itself. So I don't know. I've considered it, but it's not my main concern really. If something organically occurs that feels okay, and we talk to our community and it feels okay with them, or people volunteer their work or are willing to donate work or something like that, then that would be something I would, consider.
Would you not consider having like a Patreon page, or maybe creating like a Kickstarter to create like a photo book or a magazine or something?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I would be interested in that. I honestly, I don't know the specifics of how that works about, getting artists to agree to, to make sure to have their work be involved in it, and what that entails. I don't know enough. I'm not up on how all that stuff works. I know Nico wants to do that kind of thing with us. That's more his department, and that's something I'm interested in, definitely. But it's just about, I don't know, it's just about feeling good about it and feeling like everyone involved feels comfortable with it. I don't know, does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense, trust me. That makes probably more sense than you realize.
Okay.
because like the whole charging for features thing, like yeah, that I don't find that comfortable at all. I would never charge for a feature on the phone for
No,
people,
me
like
neither.
ever. And the whole reason is because that's not why I'm doing it, you know.
Yeah.
And I've had plenty of angry emails saying, you know, like, oh, well, you're trying to steal my work, even though obviously I'm asking for permission to use it. But it's kind of funny, like the amount of people who replies to me saying, oh, how much is it going to cost me? And when I say it's free, they don't believe me. Um, and I'm just, and actually, it's funny because quite a lot of people I am now good friends with didn't believe me at the start. And I'm like, well, listen, I always say to people, because I have a PayPal and I have a Patreon, I'm like, if you want to donate something, you go ahead, but there's honestly no pressure to. And trust me, if you
Yeah.
don't, I'm still going to run the site. I don't care. If I get paid to do
Yeah.
this, I don't care. If I get paid to do this, it's a bonus. But right now, I've got it all scheduled, whether I'm getting paid or not. So, you
Yeah.
know, it's all good. But I truly do think you deserve to be paid for what you do. Like you deserve it.
Yeah.
I truly believe that. And I wanted to just say to you, if you do ever create anything like a Patreon or a donation, let me know and I will happily donate. Or if you're going to create a book of any sort, let me
Yeah.
know and I would happily donate to that because I think it's a
Definitely.
genuinely worthwhile cause. I
I would
truly do.
definitely want it to be a collaborative process, doing that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I agree with you that like you do it for doing it, and then if an opportunity arises, then it does, and that's great. But I definitely see like from day one, a magazine I've wanted to have a physical magazine.
Yeah. Yeah, you should definitely do that. That'd be perfect. That'd be so
Yeah.
good. And actually, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about or ask you about, I guess, would be kind of like the development of Dustville in terms of like, you guys don't have a website.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of curious, like, are you ever considering, or is it like kind of in your plans at some point to kind of develop the page from just a page? Like, would you never do kind of like interviews and kind of photo books and workshops and photo walks and that kind of stuff? Or is that something that you're not
We,
thinking about?
we've talked about that. About something, about having a page and stuff, and it's something that we're interested in, in pursuing and looking at. But again, it's managing my own. It's trying to find that balance between I'm trying to figure out a way to do this for myself and for a career and for a living,
Yeah.
and I'm managing doing this thing, which is right now just for fun, I guess, for lack
Yeah.
of a better term.
Actually, that's not something I thought to ask you, but now you're here. How many, your audience, is it mainly American?
Um, I I think I think it's a good percentage American, but something I don't really pay that much attention to. Honestly, I do consciously look for work from around the world,
Yeah.
but I don't pay attention as much to followers. I know there's some people in England and some people in like around Europe and like India and places like that, but and some Mexico and stuff like that. But I don't know. It's not something I really. I just kind of just have the face, the person, more than
Yeah.
the location in mind when I think about it.
It could be actually really interesting to look at just in terms of like your stats and kind of like where people are
Yeah,
coming from. That could just be quite interesting. That's all I just thought about randomly,
yeah,
like,
it
wait,
is.
because every single time I go into Dustville, I feel like everybody's American. Or it
Yeah,
has like a very American aesthetic, whether the people are from America or not. If to me it
yeah.
feels that way. So yeah, just something I'm just kind of curious about. I just thought about it now. I thought, wait, I haven't
That would
actually
be
asked you that.
my guess is that it's a good percentage American,
No, nothing
but
wrong with that. I love that personally, but I'm just kind of curious about that because I just kind of thought about it. So, what does it mean to be a successful artist, and how do you measure the success of your own work?
um, that's good. I don't know. I guess like I said before, for me, I guess I could look at success as that I'm continuing to grow and improve. That's a success. But I mean, for me, like I have goals of being able to make this a career. I think that would be successful if I could pay all my bills by doing this. That would be a measurement of success, or just. I mean, I think it's in a way. I think I'm a bit successful in that I started something and I've seen it through, and
Yeah,
I've improved, and I didn't know how to use a camera at all, and I've figured some things out, and so that there's some success in that. Um, but again, I want to continue to evolve and grow. But I mean, ultimately, I would like to be able to pay my bills by using a camera. I
Yeah.
think that would be my ultimate. I mean, success. And then I guess above that would be the next level would be that I would be able to pay my bills only doing what my own creative work. I would consider that extremely successful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably a very common and shared goal.
Yeah.
Um, and one that I don't actually feel is as unreachable as it may seem. I think it's really about the right kind of audience and the right kind of way you go about things, which is kind of not actually easily found. But I think it's kind
Yeah.
of like it's possible. It's people are doing it now, so it's very possible.
Yeah.
It's not as unreachable as the people seem to think it is, or as crazy as people think it is. But yeah.
Yeah.
So
No, I went on a date and I explained what I was doing, and she was basically, "That's too competitive. I would just go back to teaching if I were you." So I thought that was kind of funny. Uh, that well, you're right. I guess if it's difficult, I should probably quit then. I'm just kind of joking, but like, uh,
no, but there's
I
some truth in that though. There's a lot of truth
yeah,
in that though, and particularly
I
if
mean,
you're told by people
yeah,
that, then yeah,
yeah. There's that kind of like, you know, thing of you have to be realistic, and that's just it's just a hobby, and like you're told to follow your dreams until a certain point, and then you're told to stop following your dreams
yeah,
and I did that, I guess, and so I guess now I'm making up for it by trying to really follow my passion.
yeah, yeah. I think that's great though. It's great that you're in the kind of point in your life where you're like, oh, actually, this is what I want to dedicate my time to. This is what makes me
Yeah,
happy. Because not
yeah.
everybody finds that. So I think that's really great.
Hmm. So in a way, I guess in a way of that I'm single right now and I don't have any children, I can be a little more selfish about that with my time, where
Oh
like
yeah,
I you know what I mean?
yeah,
That I probably uh wouldn't I couldn't take it to this extreme if that were the case. But since it isn't the case, then I'm making the most of it.
yes, I 100% agree with you, and I think that's one of the things we don't actually think about in terms of when we see people being really productive. We don't think about like, okay, so what responsibilities do they have outside of
Yeah,
just themselves? Because if you have a family and you've got kids and you've got a full-time job, you almost have no time to do anything else.
exactly. Yeah.
And it's kind of like, yeah, if you're looking at like, a 17-year-old who has literally no job but has all the time in the world because their parents are funding him to go out and shoot
Hmm.
images, of course you're going to feel somewhat kind of like, I'm not doing as much. That's because you don't have the same resources. And I think it's
Yeah.
very important to remember that, you know, as long as you're putting the time and effort into creating the work you want to create when you can create it, that's what's going
Yeah.
to matter more than the amount you create or like the way in which you create it.
Yeah.
Um, I
And
guess.
that's for me another way of, I guess, making the taking the attitude of like, okay, now what? Like I was dating someone and we broke up, and I I used that, like, that was terrible and it was heartbreaking, but my I dove into photography
Yeah.
and I improved a lot. So it was, you find these things that without the suffering, there wouldn't, some of these opportunities or these chances to grow and to learn and to explore wouldn't happen. So sometimes I don't I feel like I've done my most growth during the hardest times in my life, as bad as they are
Yeah.
at the time. When you look back on that, you're like, actually, it served me that I went through that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like, absolutely. Yeah. Even though at the moment in time you might not know that and you might not really understand
Yeah,
it. Like,
exactly.
I'm not going to romanticize it, but sometimes the suffering is necessary
Yeah,
for the final outcome. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it makes you appreciate when you aren't suffering.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's like when you're in pain, and it's a pain that lasts a while, and then you just one day notice that it's gone, and then you're just so appreciative to not be in pain anymore. You know, it does kind of like help you, remind you to be appreciative of what's going well and what's going right. So it's weird. It's weird that kind of a global pandemic and a breakup has really influenced my work and made it improve. But I guess it's interesting that that's how it turned out, because at the time they both felt like end of the world tragedies to me. But on the other side, it's interesting. It's just all perspective. When you're in it, you don't think that, but now I'm kind of grateful for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So this might be a quite hard question for you to answer, actually.
Right?
In your opinion, what makes a good piece of art? And the second part of that question is, what was the last image or piece of media that captivated you? And what was it about it that left an impression on you?
I mean, I think, like I said before, some interest, like there is so many things in the world that are competing for our attention. So when a piece of artwork grabs your attention, I think that's really important. There's sometimes it's some ineffable quality about it that just grabs some visceral thing that you want to look at it, or it evokes some emotion in you. I think that's important, and it doesn't need to be necessarily positive. It could be feelings of longing or helplessness or something. But out of all the all the work out there, all the things competing for you, this piece of work caught your attention. Something about it. So to me, that's something I always think about is why I try to, like, why am I interested in this? And then the fact that I am interested in it is, like, I guess that's the first thing. I'm interested in this, and now why am I? And so that's what I think makes really good work. And then I think the ability to create emotion, to like evoke emotion out of you, and feeling that you're there, or imagine that you're there, or take you to another place. Like, I think that's really what good art can do. And so it grabs you in, grabs your attention from all these millions of things, but then you feel a certain way, and it takes you to a certain place. I think I just all those like all your senses are engaged, and things you can't quite explain, just like attraction. Like what makes you attracted to a certain person. There's some, you don't always know what it is. There's some quality that you can't quite explain, but you're just drawn to it. And so I like to think of art like that, like just like anything that we're attracted to. And I guess I'll go back again to Morgan Miller. He did this house that it was just this creepy house, and it was snowing, and I just thought it just conveyed this amazing, cold, freezing, almost like the end of The Shining mood in me, of I just felt I could feel being there, looking at it, and feel like how creepy it would be to be there. And I instantly wanted to know how he did it. And that, to me, that's interesting. That is something I find interesting, is, oh, how did he do that? How did he create that? And so that house, and we posted it on Dustville. Actually, Nico did. I really liked it too, but Nico ended up posting it, and it's just that is one of my favorite pieces of his, and it's just, I just felt it.
That's really incredible. I
Yeah,
think especially when a photograph has the ability to, as you said, evoke emotion, it kind of make you feel something, and kind of capture your attention, and kind of make you just
yeah,
be like, oh, it makes you stop. I think anything that makes you
yeah,
stop is powerful.
yeah,
Yeah, particularly in this
exactly.
society. Absolutely. Okay, 3 more questions, and then we shall
Okay,
call it a day, or a
sounds
night
good.
in my case. So, my next question for you is from the last person I interviewed.
Oh yeah.
A really, really great artist called Ellis King creates these beautiful, well, though I say they're beautiful, but they're more kind of intriguing
Hmm.
portraits of women that are kind of slightly skewed and kind of slightly, you kind of look at them and think there's something a bit strange about them. Her work is really, really interesting. Her question for you was, when is your favorite time of day to create work and why?
Um, my favorite time to create is definitely in the evening. I feel like I've never been a morning person, and even as a teacher, like every morning waking up, it was like, oh no. Um, I feel like it takes my brain all day to really get going for some
Yeah,
reason. It's always been that way. And it just happens to work with like the golden hour and blue hour and night photography. So I do stuff in the morning, but it's not my favorite time to create, but I enjoy the morning. I like the way it looks, but it's my least favorite time to create because I'm not all there. But in the evening, like 5 o'clock, 5 or 6 o'clock is when I really, for some reason, everything comes together then. And it works well because like that's when I like to shoot too.
yeah, that's so cool. I think it's really
Yeah.
cool that you have like a certain time and you know what kind of time. So it's like you can kind of plan your day around, I'll call at this time, I want to be here at this time to
Yeah.
shoot this image. I think that's really cool. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Um,
I plan around I look when the sunset is
yeah,
and then plan my shooting kind of around that to time it.
that's so cool. So, do you have a question for the next artist I interview?
Yeah. I want to know, for whatever their art form is what was the best advice that they received that still stays with them to this day, that is, and maybe even like a mantra for them. And then is that the same, like, is that the same advice that they give to another person, or is there another piece of advice that they give to people who are beginning that ask
Oh,
them questions?
I like that. That's really cool, actually. So, what's the best piece of? I'm trying to actually type in English.
Yeah.
A piece of advice. So, the penultimate question
Okay.
is: what would your younger self think about your work?
I think my younger self would be amazed that I'm even doing this. Uh, I would love to be inhabit that body and be able to look at it through those eyes because
Yeah,
you're so close to your own work. I think I would be impressed that, because I start a lot of projects and start a lot of endeavors and don't see all of them through. I see some of them through. I'm one of those kind of, like, I'll pick up something, get adequate at it, and then move on. Um, I probably would be impressed with myself that I stuck with it with the tenacity that I have. I probably That would be the thing I think I would be most impressed with from my younger self. Like, good job, man. You're sticking with it. You found something you loved and you're doing it.
that's awesome. That's such a good
Yeah.
reflection to have as well, though, because it just
Yeah.
shows how much you've grown as a person as well. Not
Yeah.
just the fact you're doing something cool. It's like you've actually grown enough that you're so sure of what you're doing, and I think that's something that I actually really wish I had. I really wish I had that kind of certainty. Um, yeah, that's a really good quality to have. It's not something that I actually see in a lot of people. So
Yeah.
I'm actually very, I don't know, I'm very kind of like excited for you. I'm very kind of happy for you that you're that way. I think that's really amazing,
Yeah. I
actually.
appreciate that.
Like I truly do. I think that's very amazing. It's something that I don't see in a lot of people. I see a lot of
Yeah.
uncertainty and a lot of like doubt and a lot of like, oh, I'm not sure.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying you're like, perfectly, oh, this is a for
No.
sure
Yeah.
thing, but you definitely seem to have thought about it. And I think that's
Hmm.
the important part.
Yeah. For sure.
Right here. So the last question, which is a double
All right.
barrel question, which is um, what are you currently working on? And where can people find more about you and your work?
Um. I am currently working on more more shots that I shoot every day. So I'm just in the process of editing several shots that I've taken. More night shots, more moody atmospheric stuff, and just still just playing with it. And I'm meeting tomorrow with my mentor, and we're doing some portrait stuff, some lighting stuff. So I'm really trying to learn the ins and outs of portraits. So when I do start taking on more jobs, I really know what I'm doing. And I'm also in the process of setting up some prints. But like I said, I do a test run for myself to make sure I like them first. And I liked one that I did out of 4 before, and then I have 4 more coming. And so we'll see. I want to feel like I have 4 or 5 solid shots, and then I think I'll probably put up a print shop and start doing those. I'm excited about that. I just really want to make sure I'm happy with it, and I feel like people get a good product if they decide to purchase it.
That's absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
Jesse, thank you so much for this.
Yeah, thank you, man. It's a pleasure and honor.
That concludes the second and final part of my conversation with Jesse Tate. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions or comments about it, please send me an email at theflyingfruitbowl@gmail.com. Or get in touch via social media sites such as Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. The Flying Fruit Bowl audio interviews can now be found on a variety of sites such as Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you like the show, please consider rating, reviewing, sharing, or subscribing on any of those platforms to help spread the word. Please don't forget to check out theflyingfruitbowl.co.uk for daily art inspiration for written interviews. And if you're a creative, please get in touch for a chance to be featured and interviewed yourself. The Flying Fruit Bowl now also has a Patreon page if you're interested in supporting the platform further. Tiers start from £1, and more information can be found over at patreon.com/theflyingfruitbowl. If monthly donations are not your thing, we now also have a PayPal for one-time donation. I'll leave a link to our PayPal in the show notes.